Hello and welcome to a special mini winter series of the Shindig. I'm your co-host, Dr. Tom Horn, and this is
Luke Barry,
He's
producer,
not just the
editor
co-host.
type.
You're also the editor, producer extraordinaire. Is there
I
anything
am
you can't do?
I am the creative heartbeat of Rubicon, so that's just what we're going with here. That's what I'm now stylizing myself as.
I like it. We'll get that on your web bio. The reason we're
That's a
here
joke, by
today.
the way, in case anyone thinks I'm an egomaniac.
Yeah, no. We're definitely not. We're definitely not egomaniacs as we front this video podcast. But we're here today, I say, to launch this mini season. But we're going to be talking about Brookside Meadows. So this is that amazing Roman villa complex. We made actually a feature-length documentary about it. And Luke will tell you a little bit more on that in a second. But the kind of breaking news is that we've just been nominated for Current Archaeology's Rescue Project of the Year for Brookside Meadows. So, as a company, we're thrilled. We're thrilled, especially for the site staff, everybody who's been involved in that. And we're interviewing two of the leaders of the dig today, and that's Francesca Giarelli and Louis Stafford. And they've been managing this process for our wonderful clients, Barratt and David Wilson Homes. But as I say, you may have heard about this because we've had global coverage for the Brookside Meadows Roman Villa Complex finds, and Luke was integral to put together a documentary with me, and I think Luke can describe that just briefly now.
Yeah, so the documentary is basically on the ground, as much of an insight of the underground workings of that site as you're going to get. So it's really, you can see why it was nominated when you watch this documentary. You can see the passion from the people involved. You can see how interesting this site is and just how rich it is in finds. We cover all the finds that were there to date. And it's just absolutely fantastic. I would advise pausing here and going back and watching that documentary if you haven't already, because this interview that we do with Louis and with Francesca is very much a part two to that documentary, and you'll understand it a lot more if you do that, I reckon.
Yeah, there's a lot of updates in this. So yeah, that's what Luke says. I think is absolutely correct. Pause now. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll also get the treat of seeing all the images that will add to this. But if you want to see even more images on a feature-length documentary, head to our YouTube page as well. But I think it just leaves it for both us to say congratulations to everyone on the site and the client and everybody in the company here for the nomination. Do watch the documentary and enjoy this chat with Francesca and Louis. Hi, Francesca. Hi, Louis. Thank you so much for joining Luke and I here today. We'll just get straight into it because this site is so fascinating. So I want to talk to you about Brookside Meadows. So if you had to tell, the classic Alien from Mars, what was interesting and important about the Brookside Meadows Roman Villa complex, what would be the first thing you'd say to them to get their attention? The sort of thing that's the reason why it's important, why it's interesting, and why it was known around the world.
I probably will go for the same things like said to my grandma. It's like, we have a Roman villa.
That'll do it.
It's more than
that's
that.
That ticks the box. Yeah. And Louis, have you been telling your family members about the site? Because you're of course famous around the world as well with your picture.
The one picture, yeah, there's nothing to go with it. It's the big buildings, but with the plaster work, the painted plaster, that's unique.
And I suppose then that's a good way in. When both of you, we'll start with Francesca again. But when did you first realize, as an archaeologist, that this site was special? Kind of nationally, potentially internationally important site, because people do find villas, but they can be there can be just a few robbed out walls. But this site is different. So, what was the first thing you saw, or the first day when you're standing over a trench and you look at it and go, "Oh, this is different"?
Well, for me, it was particularly when we found the first wall. I didn't want to believe that. I didn't want to call it a wall. I was like, maybe it's just a French drain that is like a drain filled with stones, but then the French drain became a bit too long and a bit too complex, and that's when, well, I realized that that was indeed a building, and then the villa.
And was this the kind of thing that you're kind of phoning up Louis, and Louis like going, "Oh, what next?" And you're like, Louis, project manager. Ideally, it would just be a ditch with nothing in it. And then, so Francesca, you're phoning Louis up and saying, "Oh, Louis, what was your experience then when you first became aware that it was an important site?"
Well, you always ask for pictures so you can at least get your eye on what they're seeing. It's every day that they were like, "Oh, the walls don't stop; they keep going," and it's like, oh, okay. So it turns into a villa, and that's fine. And then we start to fertile in one other area, and it's like, oh, there's another wall, and it's not stopping, and it's another building. And it was like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, so we got two parts of a villa complex, and then eventually the old building came up, and it was like, that's different.
Can I ask,
And
what's the feeling like on site then when you're gradually uncovering these things? Is there kind of a growing excitement? Is there like a, oh no, this is more work? Is there like, what's the feeling like on site?
It's kind of a mix of the two, like especially in, like, for the other archaeologists on site is more like excitement. Finally, we have something, that is more than just a ditch, more than just a pit. We can take on a building that is not that common, like in rural commercial archaeologists. In my position, it's the mix of the two. It's like, this will take forever. It's much more complicated. We need to tell the client now. So
They see
yeah.
a cool Roman villa, you see a mountain of paperwork, basically.
Yeah, yes, kind of.
And Louis as well, is that the I mean, imagine as Francesca was alluding to there, it's excitement because we're interested, and that's why we're in commercial archaeology and why we're working with a company that kind of values it to the extent that it does. But then equally, you've got to see it as a project as well.
Yeah, you kind of just throw your hands up in the air at that point and be like, "Oh God, this is going to take a while to unpick," and you then have to get a survey together so you've got something to show the client and explain to them that this isn't normal. And yeah, it does become a lot of work, but it's sort of still fun as well, because you don't get to play with these things, and then afterwards your brain sort of starts thinking, well, how can we best portray this and excavate it and get Francesca and her team to do best by the archaeology, I suppose, is the where your head starts to go to.
And we'll talk about the amazing work that the whole team has done at the end, and the fact that the client have been so brilliant as well, because nobody expects to find something like Brookside Meadows. It's such a rare find, but I think with the international fame, and hopefully everybody's getting something out of it, and equally the local community have been so great as well. And we'll discuss that sort of outreach, but for now, because we'll talk about the Roman material. There's a lot of it, but just to begin, for all the prehistorians out there, could you both just tell us a little bit about, because this site doesn't exist in isolation, does it? We've got that Bronze Age, and we've got a lot of Iron Age, don't we? So starting with Francesca, can you just give us maybe a little hint from what you've seen on the ground, the world before the Roman villa?
Yeah, like well, as you said, the site didn't just start during the Roman period. We can see through like all the Iron Age ditches, the enclosure, the roundhouses, that there is for sure a peak during the Iron Age. We have few hints of like the Bronze Age, not much, because we have so much of the later period that probably everything that came before was then kind of destroyed, but the people that come after, basically. So yeah, no, the landscape is pretty rich. Like the period of occupation, it's very long and basically seemingly not interrupted until after the Romans.
And Louis, yeah, a bit more than that, because I mean, Luke and I have been there twice, and the Iron Age material, are we looking more at roundhouses and sort of large boundary ditches, and are you getting sort of pottery as well? So Louis, and then Francesca, if there's anything you want to add to that as well in terms of finds, please add that.
So the Bronze Age stuff is, I mean, we don't have a lot of it. It's a few pits with pottery. So that's definitely where we pick up. But there's some unusual finds there, and like Francesca says, the Iron Age stuff's probably trashed it. But we've got, you know, bronze daggers and a dagger and a bronze socketed hammer, and they're unusual. Normally, you sort of find those on, you know, ritual, you know, barrow sites and burial sites normally. And the fact that they were very close by to where the villa is, it might be that occupation that then leads into the Iron Age, that area has always had a preeminence towards, you know, being occupied or something slightly special, which has kept the focus there. But the Iron Age stuff transitions, it looks to be, anyway, what we've got is it goes straight through into the Roman period. There's no break. So the people that were there literally moved 30 meters south and build the villa.
And become Romans. I think that was Francesca. You were saying, you know, we can reveal. I don't know if this happened yet, but we're making a documentary about this, and that has been discussed. So, Francesca, yeah, just a little bit more about that what you see in terms of it's the same people, you know, essentially that are decide to become Romans because it's kind of a cultural choice, isn't it?
It kind of feels like that whoever was living here before the arrival of Roman was kind of important in their own, like they were kind of rich. We have a concentration also of like Iron Age coins. You don't usually find many of them on site, but also in the few other sites that had Iron Age occupation and Roman occupation that they worked before, they also like some hint of fight, like some violence dead here and there, like some decapitated skeletons. None of that seems to happen amongst farm. And there might be little hints that whoever was living here fully accepted the Romans as the new way to keep their wealth and just going on with them, basically.
Because there's no way they can hide. And I'll just go back to Louis, that, you know, if you've got these trackways and you've got, it's a chalk stream, isn't it? So a very rare kind of natural phenomenon as well. So, and it's, you know, I don't know, just want to raise the point of the topography as well, because where the buildings are, this is the same for the Iron Age as well, that they're slightly above there. They're kind of on the drier part of sites now. So it's a nice place in the landscape, isn't it? It's got these sort of, you know, these sort of nodal sort of, you know, points and routes going past them. So if, you know, the Romans are always going to be interested in that as a site, aren't they? And they're going to be attracted to that. And it's always going to be a place where people are attracted to because it's a nice place to live in the landscape. Would that be a correct way to characterize it?
It's it's sitting on a slight bluff in the landscape, definitely. And you've got water source with the brook to the east, and that's sort of hedging it in. But obviously the one thing that makes this slightly different, because you don't always get lovely Iron Age Roman transition sites, is the fact that the Iron Age were there. They characterize this as a nice place to be because it's in a little bluff point and probably had trackways going everywhere. That, you know, continued to stay there, and they didn't move very far at all before they, you know, Romanized and built their little villa complex.
And look, I mean, you know that I always like it when our interviewees lead into the next question. It's almost like we plan it, I think, as we say. But yeah, so on the Roman villas then, because we've called it a lot, and people who've heard about Brookside Meadows may have seen, well, they probably will. It's all around the world. It referred to as a complex. We call it a villa complex. First off, you know, why are we calling it a complex? Could you just tell us a little bit about the Roman buildings, you know, from the earliest and maybe into the later ones, and maybe what's happening after? So this section is really, this is probably what everyone will listen to, because everyone loves the Romans, but we want to now talk about the structures that we're finding on site, and we've got something known as or at least one, if not two, winged corridor villas. And we've got an aisled building, which is we think is truly spectacular. So, yeah, starting with Francesca, could you just talk us through maybe the first Roman building you think is on site, what type of building it was, and then what's happening after that building in terms of buildings that are built subsequently?
So our first building is most likely the West Corridor Villa. That is located between, like, well, the North Corridor Villa and what is the Ale building. We have few indication that that's the oldest one, mainly the fact that the Ale Corridor Villa is built on top of the destruction layer the demolition layer from that building, and it's a very simple plan. It has like two little rooms protruding and then a corridor connecting all the rooms and like a rectangular shape attached to the corridor. Yeah, that's the oldest one that we have. It's also the probably the smallest one between the three in terms of square meters that covers.
So it's quite a modest. So when they're starting this, as we call them, these winged corridor villas, and if you're watching the YouTube version, you'll probably be seeing somewhere around us now an image, a reconstruction of that. So that's maybe this kind of the first villa. It's a modest, maybe more like a modest, quite nice farmhouse, but still more like a sort of nice farmhouse. Are we looking at, do you think 1 story or 2 stories? Because I understand it. You can tell maybe by the thickness of the walls if a villa like that has got sections that maybe have more than 1 story. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're probably looking about a 2-story building anyway, at least on the main part of the building. And we can tell that because, as you say, the walls are quite thick. They're not that deep, so we think that in this case, the elevations, like the walls, were made mainly probably with wooden and some bricks, more than like all stones all the way up. But yeah, almost for sure it was a 2-story building.
Okay, so a sort of nice farmhouse, but as you say, maybe more sort of wood and plaster with brick in places. So it maybe starts off a little bit more modest, but I've been to the site, but then changes happen. So can you tell us a bit about what you think happens next in terms of the Roman buildings on the site?
So yeah, they probably either get more wealthy or they wanted to improve their quality of life, and that's when the Western building starts happening. It's again a winged corridor villa. It's less wide but longer in more depth. Like it has more depth in his body, so it's more of a square plan instead of a rectangular plan. But again, and that's already like an upgrade. We can see that the foundation are way deeper, so it's most likely that all the walls were made out of stones or out of bricks. Probably even the roof had more roof tiles instead of like maybe the other one was more thatched or something similar. Like, so for sure is an improvement. And even a bigger improvement is when they decided to demolish the western wing corridor villa and build the ale corridor. This building was like 50 meters long and about 20 wide, so it was quite a big building. Again, the foundation are very deep, so for sure had a second floor, maybe even a third. The columns and the pillars will develop to like with elevation, so it was an impressive building.
And and I'll ask Louis about this aisled Cordovelli. So yeah, the picture then we've been told so far is that there's a modest, maybe more like a farmhouse, this western winged corridor villa, and then there's the northern range it's a bit fancier, and then at some point the more modest farmhouse is demolished, and then they build this, which is known as an aisled building, but you might know them in other parts of the Roman world. They're almost like basilicas as well, which are not necessarily churches originally, but these, they're somewhere between a barn, an administrative center, and a church. So, Louis, could you tell us a little bit then about this aisled building, because it would be quite an impressive sight, wouldn't it?
It's very large. I mean, most things that through the Iron Age we wouldn't have had anything that was particularly tall or that dominating as such. Not for houses anyway. You're talking about round houses. You get large ones, but then as you move into the Roman period, round houses do get big, but they're still going to be sort of a brown mark on the landscape. Whereas what we've got there with the first villa would have been white plaster, which we've got some of the external plasters fallen off it. So, good analogy is Hadrian's wall would have been lime washed or whitewashed, and it would have been like a gleaming white building or visage on the horizon, so it would have been dominant. But what we've got with the Isle Villa is something that's, 2, if not 3 stories high. It would have been a massive white gleaming statement really on the landscape, saying that we are very Roman, but we're also, we've managed to build this massive, getting towards town-like basilica building.
And it's sitting on this bluff as well with this gleaming white visage, as you say. It's making a statement. And I'm Luke, I don't know if you've come across an aisled building before, so I would it be good of me to ask for the viewers and listeners, if you're walking into one of these buildings, what would you see? Because we talk about aisles. What's the aisle? Because I believe you've got these massive square sort of pads for maybe columns or posts. So if you're walking in, can you describe the kind of the layout? As I say, when I talked earlier about a basilica, church architecture comes out of these buildings. Am I right? And again, Francesca and Louis, just any just so people can visualize, what it might look like, especially walking into it.
So yeah, walking into it will be almost like walking into medieval churches, like while the tour, as you say, the architecture then transfers into churches. So the original one is very similar. You will have like a main central aisle, column or pillars on both sides, and then 2 smaller aisles on each side. That they could have been like partitioned to have more like smaller rooms, smaller compartment, whatever you wanted. But it would have been quite an experience if you were not very much used to buildings or to building of each side. Also, like if you were to look up, like the ceiling would have been very tall, like maybe with like wooden beams, and then the floors of the above. So for someone at that stage and period, so especially living in like rural Oxfordshire, far from the bigger Roman cities, in a way, that would have been a very impressive building. It would have been something that they were not used to, basically.
And Louis, just about the use, because again we've talked about admin, and we talked about them possibly some developing as into sort of ecclesiastical architecture, but at that time, what is your feeling? Is it's more likely to have been a big barn? We've talked elsewhere about the fact that in the later Roman period, villa complexes are becoming a bit more kind of industrialized. They're producing cereals, to supply the late Roman armies and navies. And I think a lot of actually that wealth gets taken out of Roman Britain and is used for the armies in the continent. So if I'm walking into this, am I seeing piles of wool and cereals, and as Francesca said, maybe there's side offices where there's people there with an abacus or figuring out how much they need to give to the imperial visitor that's about to arrive and take a percentage off to the army. What's your guess? Because I know it's not been anywhere near fully excavated, but what's your feeling of what might have been inside that building?
You've gone very, very tag on that. So it's just, your best bet is these are massive administration areas. Yes, they're a farm, but they're a farm that's sort of overseeing quite a large area of the landscape, more than likely. And it's obviously this one's doing quite well, and it's quite a large building. But I don't know if it would have been necessarily stockpiled with the produce. I think that probably would have gone elsewhere. Because there's a little hint that we've got, and we're still in the process of unpicking it, but it does look like there's a bathhouse attached to it within one corner, and that's part of the brick surface that we've been unpicking. We weren't sure whether it was a hypocaust or something else, but actually we've got other parallels now that are suggesting that it is a bath that's tucked into the corner, which you're starting to move away from. It's still administration, and it still can be, but obviously these are the people that are running it, so they've got their perks inside there. So I don't think they're filling it with the produce necessarily. And the north wing was more than likely still in active when the old building was up, and we're fairly certain of that as well. So you're going back to your villa complex, which part's running which is where the people that own it, that are living, that are enjoying their lives, and which ones are the ones that are sort of overseeing the books and stockpiling the valuables.
So that this is in many ways more the office for the estate manager, maybe more that. And and well, I think that again, you guys are obviously experts on podcasting, because that kind of brings into, you talk about the hypocaust and the bathhouse. Because I think the parallels that you were talking about, I think maybe more at Brading Roman Villa, which is almost a palatial villa on the Isle of Wight, which has one of these. It has wing corridor villas. At the same time, it's got an aisle building, and the aisle building has had, I should say, a hypocaust supplied bathhouse in one corner of it. So yeah, I'd like to just talk about the wealth of the site, because you talked, Louis, for example, about the painted plaster. So I think that's the best way. So we want to talk about the wealth. Why Brookside Meadows is not just a sort of nice farmhouse. It's a complex, and there's a huge amount of money there at various points in its life. So I'd just like to talk about, maybe all together in concert, this. You've got this massive new building with a bathhouse in a corner. You've got this painted plaster. You've got the coins. I'd just like you to talk about the wealth more generally, because could you talk a little bit about, Francesca, about the wealth that's seen in the painted plaster, and also the amazing, there's the dress accessories. We've got silver rings, we've got silver coins, as well as the copper alloy coins. Yeah, so maybe starting with the painted plaster and just talking about other elements that maybe show that this is just not a normal farmhouse. There's wealth here.
Well, yes, even like the first of the building, the western one, that also had like painted plaster, and we knew that it wasn't just your usual white or red, that yellow, blue, green. So even then, at the beginning, they were quite rich, even if it was like a more modest like building in itself. And as you were mentioning, like we have thousands of coins now, and then well, jewelry of different kind. So yeah, there was for sure a wealth, but we are not entirely sure if his wealth is merely related to their administrative power, or if it was related also on the fact that probably they were the main like religious center for this part of for the people living around them, not this part of Oxfordshire, just the local community kind of thing.
And thank you. So yeah, and Louis, just to continue in that vein, maybe a bit more about the plaster and the silver rings, the silver, where we're getting the precious metal, the gilt brooches. That's because you've worked on a lot of amazing Roman sites as well. Was that something that came across then, that there's a bit of money, there are good contacts at this site? It's connected to networks.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely connected, like the plaster, the painted plaster that Francesca's talked about, some of the colours, and we've broached on this before, but they're coming from a long way, using Roman trade networks, all the way from potentially east of the Mediterranean to get here. So that they are well established. There's good connections there, and there's we have the amphora, and we have the Gallic seminware, and all of those sorts of things. The imports that are coming in, they're well tied into what is the Roman trading network. But there's potentially so archaeologists, when we turn up at a sort of a normal Roman site, we are hunting for what is the rubbish, what's being left behind, and what's been accidentally dropped. Sometimes you find sites where they've deliberately deposited stuff, and we'll find lots of things. What's been accidentally lost and dropped on this site is exponentially higher than any other site, which makes it slightly more important, is the fact that this definitely had a lot of wealth and trade moving through it, to the fact that gold coins, silver jewelry, large intact pieces are being dropped everywhere. And so you have to have that's a lot of rubbish to be kicking around and not being picked up, So it suggests that this site is definitely quite an epicenter for what is potentially trading, or maybe ritual, something like that makes it just not your normal typical farmhouse that's done well and adopted Roman ideals. It's doing exceptionally well for itself. because you don't get 1,000 coins plus from reigning in sort of the last 200 years of the Roman period. You don't expect to find that in a hoard, and a hoard's normally a couple of hundred maybe. What we've got is it sets a new bar, really.
And yeah, no, I've myself been digging on Roman villas, including in Italy, including one that was almost palatial for the Tiber Valley project and Sangro Valley projects, and what struck me walking around the site, and look, I'll ask you then, did you notice as well that every spoil heap is just full of ceramics and like good quality and sameinware, and you've got, was that the impression that you got as well, that there's a lot here and there's a lot of wealth and there's a lot going on?
When I was on site, what I found incredible was knowing your interest and your background in it, and watching you walk around the place like it was Disneyland, and you're seeing everything scattered around. Like you were saying, there was stuff there that was being ignored, not being ignored, but that was show-stopping stuff on site. That
on any other site, it would be the star find, and it's it's just part of the plough soil essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It's great to be on the site, and I wonder, does it for you get boring's the wrong word, but do you, I guess, get used to it? Do you ever, does that feeling ever leave you, or are you always every day going, this is pretty cool?
Your expectations just go higher, doesn't it? It's like, that's almost a whole pot, and then when you're finding the half pieces, you're like, you don't struggle, you bag it up, but it's not as it's
But so what you're saying is future sites you won't enjoy anymore now after this one.
Yeah,
You're not totally wrong.
Yeah, no, I think that's it. It was, it just struck me the spoil heaps, which on any Roman site will have ceramics in it. That's the nature of a Roman site. But again, compared to palatial sites I've been looking at worked on in Italy, that Brookside Meadows is, I was flabbergasted. You can see now that I'm still thinking about it again and going through the images in my head. It's to do that is, again, it speaks so well to the teams involved that they've managed to tell us this story, because it's so complex. There's so much stuff, including really complicated things like, I'm going to mention it, ritual things. Now all archaeologists, if you say aliens or ritual, these are the two triggers for archaeologists. But I'm gonna stick with the ritual one, or what we might call religion or religious practice. Now, when we put out the press releases, that one of the things that was picked up on around the world was the what we're calling curse tablets. These lead tablets that were rolled up into very tight scrolls. We had Draken Heritage now unwrap a few of them. They don't have very obvious markings on them, but who knows, things could have been painted on them. We don't know. There are levels of analysis still to go with that. But looking at these lead scrolls and looking at everything else that we found, that was popular, and when journalists around the world are writing about it, was the fact that we had these lead scrolls, we had the amazing miniature votive axes, and I'll get you guys to describe them to the listeners and to the viewers, but also these hundreds and hundreds of coins, and other things that, again, we allude to, but we can't talk about yet, because there are treasure processes going through as well. But it's these combinations. When we go to other sites like Ely in Gloucestershire, these Roman temple complexes, you find miniature weapons in association with hundreds of late Roman copper alloy coins, and you find lead scrolls, some of which are blank, like you get at Bath with the Roman baths, and you get them in London as well. I suppose I'm asking, we'll start with Francesca, because Lou's far more as befits his experience, a bit more of a cynic, but I get very puppy dog excited about these things. So Francesca, do we have a temple, a Romano-British temple at Brookside Meadows? And you can say no, don't worry.
I can say that we've closed that there was a ritual like site on our on Brookside Meadow, but we cannot really pinpoint where these rituals were happening. As you said, the coins are very much spread everywhere, probably for later disturbance. The brooches, same. Even the miniature axes offering, like they are not in a specific place. So yes, but we don't know where yet. We can theorize that maybe it was the Western villa, but we will probably never be 100% sure in a way or another.
And before we go into Louis, how did you finding the lead scrolls, or members of your team were finding them? What was that like, the initial thought? Because imagine you find one and go, okay, it's a bit of lead, but once you find 2 and 3 and 4, you know, you just describe that kind of the emotion. I mean, Luke talked earlier about just the emotional. Sometimes we can forget because we've seen a lot of these things, but could you describe the day or days or weeks when they were being discovered and you start to think, oh, these are quite special? And as I say, we're calling them curse tablets because when you find them at places like Bath, they have little curses written on them, and by that it's like, you know, Arminius, I think, stole my toga when I was in the hot baths. Can you curse him and his descendants forever, or until he brings my toga back? But when you're discovering these things and beginning to think what they might be, what did that feel like?
Well, I'm not easy to get excited about something. So my reaction was quite more muted compared to the people that were finding them. They were bringing them to me happy, and I was like, cool.
This is when you have an Italian archaeologist at a UK villa, isn't it? Where are the golden fountains? I don't see the golden fountains.
Where's my statue, huh?
Yeah.
But obviously, well, then you start thinking about it and like, oh, well, they're interesting pieces of the past, and yeah, they're quite interesting and full of meanings. So, you know, when you start piling them up, it's like, oh, well, yeah.
Okay, Francesca, now we're going to go for the wider-eyed British archaeologist view now. So I'm fully expecting Louis just to say that he knelt down and cried when he realized the magnitude of these finds. Would that be a fair characterization, Louis, of your reaction?
You know, so no. I was very intrigued. I've got to be honest. I was like, oh, you know, are any of them? Can you see on? Is there any writing? And again, it's like, show me pictures. First thing I did, I think, was actually email Dracon Heritage and say, you know, can you sort this out for us? So Dracon Heritage did a wonderful job of unrolling those. So, but I was on tenterhooks for the next 2 weeks, being like, have you opened them all? Have you opened them all? Just because I wanted to know whether they had any writing. Because that fits, you know, everything that we've been finding up until that point. It then validates that it definitely was, if it had something like that on it. But unfortunately, it didn't. And we looked under multispectral imaging just to see if there was anything else that we couldn't see that wasn't, you know, scribed on. And unfortunately, that not to date, though. So there's still, I think, 3 or 4 left that we haven't sent to them.
But yeah, as we know from Bath and Ely and in London, there seems to be a blank ones that are provided, again, maybe in a non-literate age. So I'm going to hold on to this until the last one is unrolled. But I think, yeah, there's a possibility that that you know, for people who couldn't write, they could maybe just imbue them with their curse verbally or mentally. And we know, again, these sites that they have these late Roman coins. So, and if those coins are part of these deposits, these ritual deposits, we know these coins are going quite late into the end of the 4th century. So now I want to turn on to that period, that end of the 4th century into the 5th century. So when, you know, Roman Britain appears to be doing quite well, and especially in the south in the mid 4th century, there's building, and up to the 360s, 370s, it looks quite optimistic. But then within 2 generations, as everybody knows the story, it kind of falls apart. And in that first decade of the 5th century, the Roman coins stopped coming in, so the armies stopped being paid. So essentially, the kind of glue of the Roman system appears to fall apart, and then it gets very misty indeed. So, but focusing on the Brookside Meadows site, what do we think is happening at the end of the 4th century into the 5th century? Yeah, I'll start with Francesca. So we've got these late Roman coins. We've got the horse-headed buckle, which which is beautiful. Dated between AD 350 and 450, and then as Louis will also talk about, that we've got what looks like a very systematic deconstruction of a villa, and maybe part of that process is they're melting down lead in a corner of one of what would have been a fine villa room in the northern villa at one stage. So yeah, if I'm there in the late 4th, early 5th century, Francesca, what do you think I'm seeing? It's something that's beginning to fall down, or it's being actually deconstructed by locals. Maybe people are beginning to adapt to this post-Roman world, and they're melting down the lead pipes from the fancy drainage systems, and in the corner of a room that was once a sort of nice room. Would that be correct? It's there's a sort of gradual kind of managed decline into this post-Roman period.
For sure, it feels like that whoever was demolishing the building was organized. Like, we have basically no roof tiles. Like, usually inside of this, with building this big, you will find tons of like roof tiles. We have basically virtually like a very, very small portion of whoever was there. Even the walls that would have been, if we think of a building of like at least 2-story high, all that walls falling down, the amount of rubble that we should have found and that was here would have been immense. So yeah, for sure someone was coming here, or like still living around site, maybe on a portion of the site. Usually like in this period, we can see them occupy like one room that is much easier to manage than an entire building. Maybe like mix and match, like with postal. So partially will be like just, the walls will be made like partially on existing Romans wall, partially on the new rebuilt, like fixed and patched up together. So yes, there has been an organized demolition, like the material were moved away, maybe using one of the truck wave that we were mentioning before. And as you mentioned, we have the lead smelter. People were collecting the lead around the villa that would be used in pipes, fixtures, and so on and so forth, and then again moving it somewhere else. We don't know where, but there was someone organizing and all of this.
And yeah, I just, on the use of spolia, I'll turn to Louis now. So could you just describe? I've talked a little bit about this lead smelting in the corner of what was presumably remaining of the northern villa, and the mystery feature as well. You might give us a little bit on that as well, which has, again, some of these box tiles from the hypocaust that have ended up being used in that. So if you just talk about, say, maybe what spolia is, because I realize I've just said that out loud and rather in my head. Could you talk about that lead smelting room and the reuse of some Roman tiles or CBM in that, and then a little bit the mystery feature, and Francesca can maybe talk a bit about the mystery feature as well afterwards.
I'll let Francesca do the mystery feature, because spoilers, basically reuse of Roman building material to go to elsewhere. And there are accounts that villas in Roman Britain especially have been taken down and moved 50 or 60 miles away to another destination. And it's, I think, the cathedrals or churches, very early churches, that those examples have been known. It's quite hard to tie what was on one building, unless it's got a legionary stamp, and we only know there's so many buildings that have got that particular stamp, or teculai is normally the ones that we do. It's quite hard to provenance where that's been moved to, and then actually find it on the building. But they have managed to do that in a few places, and they do travel quite far. With our building, and like Francesca says, the teculai, the roof tiles, there's just none there. So it very, very, very much feels like the roof was still on there, and it was still intact enough that they basically were able to systematically take it down, remove it from site, The destruction of the walls as well. We're finding very, very late Roman ditches that basically piles and piles of plaster has been knocked off the walls, shoveled into ditches, and then the walls, the rubble themselves removed. And again, you know, you go back to the lead smelter in the corner, an awful lot of lead would have been used in these buildings. And it seems like they've systematically doing that, and the lead oven is slightly off center. It's definitely a later feature within that building. That they're, you know, reusing everything they can, but they're making it in a way that they can actually cart it off site easily enough, dismantling everything they can and shipping it out elsewhere.
This is what we talk about. The Brookside Meadows Villa complex would be interesting if, as Francesca was saying, it just, you know, fell down. There's piles of rubble. There's piles of roof tile or you know, ceramic building material everywhere, and we go, okay, this was abandoned. The roof fell in. The walls fell down. That makes sense, and we have evidence of that. But I think what is rare, and I'll go back to Francesca to talk about just this, and then talk about the mystery feature. This yeah, just go back into this systematic taking apart a building, because I mean, I've not encountered this, and I don't know if you have, but yeah, if you just answer that question and lead into, again, this reuse of material in the mystery feature, as we have to call it. Yeah, please take it away, because this is what I'm fascinated with, this world from the Roman world going into the early medieval world.
So it's not totally uncommon that like the early medieval world will reuse the Roman structures, because they were well, pretty well built, and so they were still standing even with like the little like maintenance that they were using at the time. But this, for me at least, is the first time that I see something being robbed that deeply, that systematically, and that perfectly. Like, we have so little remaining because these people in the past went through it so perfectly. Like, they didn't want to leave behind anything that they could have reused anywhere else. So yeah, no, it's my first time about this, that I experienced this kind of phenomenon. And it's not the first time that I see like Roman material being reused in something on site, and this will be the case of our mystery feature. So in the mystery feature, we see some of the box style that will be originally belonged in the walls to convey like heat around the villa, reused as just bricks basically, or like component of whatever they were building there. And the mystery feature, it's basically a pile of stones that seems to be in lines but not really connected to each other. And now that we like explore it a bit more and we saw a bit more, we think they're just a series of corn dryers. Just they built one, demolished, built another one, demolished, and what we've been left is just with little pieces of each one of these things, basically.
Okay, so
but
yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, it at first when we found it, it was really puzzling. It was like just this line of stones, and it's like, what is this doing here? It looked like a sort of miniature house, but obviously it wasn't really organized in any way, shape, or form until when we started to remove some of the stones, and then it made sense.
Okay. There's no longer the mystery feature, which is really
Well,
sad.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
This is the thing.
Okay,
You always want to solve a mystery, but then when you solve
Yeah.
it, it's like, there's no more mystery left.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Are there any mysteries left? Are there any areas where you're still excavating on now? And we'll start with Louis, and then we'll go to Francesca on this one. Are there any areas that are still intriguing, seeing as we're nearing the sort of end of the excavation phase?
And we've still got to complete the art building, so that's still, you know, that's the next intrigue, really. What we're opening up at the moment is Iron Age, and it's lots of Iron Age. There's bits of Roman obviously still in there, because that's where it is, but the Iron Age focus it's not stopping, and it's still all around, and it's quite prominent. So lots of enclosures and roundhouses and ring ditches and things like that. It'd be good to see whether one of those things might turn into something unusual that tells us why the Iron Age people are there, at least. Or it might just be the fact that there's just a very dense population that's inhabiting that area.
And yeah, Francesca, you're just on, what you're coming up to with the aisled building and more Iron Age materials.
Yeah, we found most of like the Iron Age material. Been located a bit more north compared to the villa, and in the hill building itself, we are still too high up for pinpoint any Iron Age, obviously, but we can see that there are features going under where the villa is, basically, because so it's most likely that the Iron Age was there as well. My main curiosity at the moment on site is, where are all the dead people? Because there was a lot of people around here, and we didn't find that many skeletons that will fill up a villa or the complex or anything really, even for the Iron Age. But we know that Iron Age are a bit weird with skeletons. But yeah, so I want to find my nice cemetery basically now.
Cemetery, and I'll take a Roman road as well. Luke, do you have anything you want to add to a wish list?
I think the cemetery is probably something that'd be interesting, definitely.
Yep. Yeah, Louis.
Two main management headaches, isn't it? Finding a well and a cemetery.
Yeah. Oh, another well. This is listeners can find can find more on that. We will link into more Roman content that we've got from Louis in the past as well when we publish this podcast. But I suppose just beginning to sort of round up that of course people maybe listening to this podcast came to it when it had a storm of global publicity about it. It really was incredible, the worldwide interest in it. And but we also had local events as well, again supported throughout by the client. Yeah, I don't know, Francesca, you want to talk about what the publicity has been like and how you've done your outreach in terms of visiting local schools and talking to the villagers, and yeah, how you find suddenly being approached by international newspapers to speak about it. So how was that day when the news came out internationally?
It was for sure quite an experience, like going from having to keep basically the project secret or not telling too much what we were finding, what was there, to have to tell them, well, everyone in the world basically what we were finding, and having like phone call from the USA, be like, hey, can you please talk to us about this? It was a complete different and thrilling experience. And up to these days, we have still people when we go maybe to the shop in the village asking for more update. They want to know what we found. They want to know when more will come out, when we will do the next talk. Just yesterday, like an old lady stopped me and was like, I'm following you on Facebook. So like talking about Red River Archaeology. So I will not lose the next one. It's like, okay, thank you. But yeah.
And that's it as well, because you and Louis, and we'll move on to Louis now. Just tell us a little bit about the talk in the village hall that you and Francesca brought a lot of finds to and talked to nearly 80 of local community that within a week, from hearing about this, turned up and listened to you talking about it.
Well, no, it was really good. The community all turned up. It was they had a lot of questions. It was good to give back to the community, to be honest, because a lot of archaeological sites you don't get the opportunity, or it's potentially not as glamorous or not right for public fits, But this one, we needed to get enough data and make sure that it was safe and before we brought it to the public eye. But we've done that, and I was really happy with how it went, to be honest.
And Luke and I were there, and Luke made a beautiful little film of it. So that's available on our YouTube channel as well. So just finally, this is kind of the of thanking Luke and I are thanking Francesca and Louis for joining us. But I know now you guys want to sort of thank your teams and the local authorities and the local community and also our fantastic client as well. So start with Francesca. Maybe want to thank you as site director. Thank your team, and I know Louis wants to speak about obviously the great work that we've done with the local authorities and the clients.
Yeah, obviously none of this would have been possible without my site team. Like we had a pretty difficult winter, but they pretty much went on through water, mud, anything, just to be like to make this possible. They worked relentlessly. They never really stopped. And yeah, I'm very glad to have them with me here because I'm just one person and they're doing most of the hard work. I'm presenting the nice results, but none of these results would have been here without them, basically. So yeah, I'm very glad to have them, and even the client on site, they've always been supportive, always been there. So yeah, I'm pretty lucky.
And Louis, what Barratt Homes and David Wilson Homes, they've been, from my perspective, doing the outreach. I couldn't have asked for more. And obviously you've been working with them as a project manager. So just speaking about them and Oxfordshire county and the archaeology, just again, they've all been absolutely brilliant, haven't they?
Yeah, I think you've said it all there, really. The Oxfordshire County Council, the archaeological teams, Richard and Stephen down there have been fantastic, and they've been working really well with the client, who's done nothing but try and help us here. And again, none of this would have happened unless Francesca and her team have sorted it out. And they've done really, really, like the conditions was something akin. It did get quite bad on certain areas, but yeah, they've worked really well to get what we've produced so far. And I'd like to thank myself because I think I've done. And no, they've done an outstanding job, but there's still a lot more to do. So yeah, stay tuned. We'll give updates as we get them.
Yeah, thank you, and to the lady who's watching developments on Facebook. We will, if you're listening to this podcast, we will continue to update, and thank you to you and to your fellow residents of Grove. They were always lovely to Luke and I when we were charging around trying to arrange the talks and I think and I think Luke and I would also like to thank Francesca and Louis for, we've been working with them for probably a year now. We've been making videos and we've been annoying them. We've been putting them on the cover of international newspapers and you're talking about the water, but it's been water off a duck's back for you guys. You've been absolute professionals on this, and I'll just leave it to Luke to give his thanks as well to Francesca Giarelli and Louis Stafford, to all the site team, to the client, to the county, and to Grove, and I'll just leave it to Luke to say his thank yous and his goodbyes as well.
Before we go, guys, I normally ask people a little bit of a, let's get a curveball question before we finish up. For ye, what I'd
not
like...
aliens, Luke, not aliens.
Not aliens. I'm not going to talk. I've been warned I'm not allowed to ask about aliens anymore. So what I'm going to ask you guys is, assuming ye are being awarded for your work in archaeology and history, etc., and what they tell you is you're allowed to have one object from history, whether it's in a museum, an art gallery, whatever it is, and you get to keep it for yourself in your house. What do you choose and why? Francesca, we'll start with you.
I'll give you a minute by saying I would take a bucket. I would take a bucket of plaster, painted or otherwise, because just the volume of it and the quality of it is, that's the thing that I would have in my house.
It doesn't have to be Roman. It doesn't have to be related to
true,
anything at all.
What do I want from history?
Would be one of those statues that you find in all your Roman villas in Italy.
It's a tough question.
I mean, yeah, it's a very tough question. I think it will be one of the first nice find I ever found, and it was like well, Frederick the First gold coin.
Nice.
I will take that. It's just because it was my first time on a big site. I was just cleaning. Up to that moment, I was just carrying around buckets of dirt. They put me, brushing the stairs, and between the stairs there was this coin, and I was like,
Yeah, that's a good answer. That's the nostalgia of it. That tells your own story as well. I like that.
The gold that cool in and of itself. It works
Yeah.
on every single level.
And Louis?
Yeah, you threw me when you were like, anything from history. Anything. And then my mind started racing, and I was like, HMS Ark Royal or something. And I was like, and then you were like, in your house. And I was like, oh, that won't fit.
This is an imaginary scenario. This isn't actually
You
going
live
to
in an
happen.
aisled building. You've got a 500, 600 square meter aisled building, so you can fit a bit of a boat in it, or a ship, I should say.
Bit anchor.
Yeah, anchor.
Well, I'd have a lawn dog, something. I quite like my 18th century stuff, to be honest. So I think I'd probably want a cannon from a ship of the line or something, and stick that in the garden. I think that'd be a nice little talking piece.
And that would keep people away from Louis, which sometimes he quite likes.
Big cannon, from HMS or something, just parked out the front. That'd be good.
That's aggressive. I like it.
Confident. We prefer confident. We use the word confident.
Confident.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's good. That tells us a lot about you. I like it.
Yeah.
Thanks very much,
Francesca's
guys.
got a beautiful memory from her early days and what it meant to her as a young archaeologist, and Louis putting a cannon on his front lawn. So there we go.
It's perfect.
Well, again, it's another classic episode. I mean, I think I just enjoy, we're kind of like proud parents, I think, Luke, aren't we? It's like everyone we have say, no, that's our favorite child. No, this is our favorite child. This was. But I think the real takeaway I've got is you can see why, the site team at Brookside Meadows have been nominated for this rescue project of the year. They're passionate, but they're, and a lot of people say, oh, I'm passionate about this, I'm passionate about that. But you can, when you watch this sort of interview, you can see it in their eyes. You can see when they're talking about interacting with their family and local communities that, they enjoy it. They enjoy the archaeology, but they enjoy working in the community and with our clients who, again, I can't say enough, have been so helpful.
Yeah. And not just that, you can we were on site with them. The passion that all of the site team seem to have there is incredible because the conditions were not ideal. It was a very wet and mucky site, and the work that was being done there by our site teams there it was absolutely incredible, and shows again, as you say, why we've been nominated for this and why we continue to deliver for our clients. Essentially, when you have site teams that are as good and as passionate as the ones we have here.
Yeah, it just makes outreach so easy when there's, really nice people doing excellent work with a great client. It's just, our job is so much easier and we still love doing it. So we hope you enjoyed it. And as ever, I'll say thank you and just leave Luke to lead us out.
So guys, if you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to give us a like, make sure to give us a subscribe, drop a comment below about what you thought of this episode. If you haven't done so already, go back and watch the Brookside Meadows Making Homes for Millennia feature-length documentary that we made. It goes into big detail about all of the stuff that was discussed here in this podcast. So it's a great partner piece to this podcast, and maybe go back through the archives, find some stuff that you might be interested in. If you like the shindig, tell your friends, give us a share, give us a like, give us a follow, drop us a comment, leave us a rating, leave us a review, and please love us forever.
Thank you. Couldn't have said it better myself. Goodbye.